Hi, hopefully you've read the text. I wanted to clear up a few things. We are going to be in the book, moving through it. So if you don't have your book, go get it, put it on pause, come back. 192, analyzing arguments. An argument, and you should know these terms, is a claim backed up by one or more reasons offered in its support. So in order for it to be an argument, though, it needs to have not just a statement that's a claim, but also something that's evidence. I wanted to point out here there are three words they're using that all mean the same thing as far as we are concerned: premises, proof, or evidence. Those are interchangeable words, at least within the context of this critical thinking class. Whenever a claim is being made, there should be some reasons for it. Those reasons are premises, proof, or evidence. Now, you should have done an exercise here, and I wanted to give you some correct answers. Identifying arguments. You either have an A for an argument or an N for it's not an argument. One is A. You have a claim, you should be able to pass. Evidence, well, you studied. Two is nothing. It's not an argument. Man, the latest Marvel was really cool. I really liked it. It's just basically restating the claim. He claims it's cool. I really liked it. Is pretty much saying the same thing again. It's not really evidence. Here, number three, if you read your text carefully, we have a question. Have you considered studying abroad? Questions, get used to this, are never evidence, and they can't be a claim either, because a claim is like a main idea statement, and main idea statements are never questions. So if it can't be evidence and it can't be a claim, it's nothing. So we're left with a claim, and that's all. Studying in Europe or Asia is a great experience. 4, we have a claim you shouldn't support national health care. And the evidence or reason, if you will, is they'll make it more expensive. Now, we're not judging any of this right now. We're just saying, is there a claim? Is there evidence? In Chapter 7, we start going into, okay, is the evidence good or not? You should get your children vaccinated. Number 5, that's a claim, and there's some evidence for it. Number 6 is a command. Make sure you give me back the DVD. In the fine print, we see that commands cannot be any sort of evidence. I promised to lend it to friend Joey. Really likes action movies. There's really nothing going on here. There's not any sort of argument. Number 7 is an A, argument. You should exercise regularly is the claim, and it keeps you healthy. And even this item, and who wouldn't want to be healthy, that's a question. Your book mentions the idea of rhetorical questions. Those are questions that aren't really questions. It's a statement. The answer is obvious. It's not really a question. Instead of it being a real question, who wouldn't want to be healthy, and that's not any kind of question at all. It's more of a statement. You want to be healthy. So rhetorical questions can be evidence, by the way. Wanted to mention that. Here, number 8 is basically just a big claim. So it's not an argument. Number 9 is nothing. There's questions in here. There's no real claim going on. 10 is a good example of an argument. The very last sentence is the claim, and then there's some pretty good reasons for the FCC should be fined. So hopefully you got that. In discussing evidence, if you read this carefully, because it won't go away, we need to look at evidence. Evidence, if you look, it must have a truth value. It has to be judged true or false for it to be evidence. And there are many things that simply have no truth or true or false value. So if you're going through here, they give you some ideas, and I wanted to identify whether this was evidence or not. Now, I first thought this was a little strange. How can we be looking at evidence when we have a claim? Well, the more I thought about it, it made sense. Evidence doesn't need a claim to be evidence. Evidence is simply something that could function in support of a claim because it has a true-false sort of dimension to it. For example, this one, number one, that could be proven true or false. That is evidence. 2 is not evidence. That is just your book mentions any sort of just explanation of belief or whatnot can't be evidence. 3, how could you not believe in psychics? That is just a question. Questions can't be evidence unless it's a rhetorical question again. 4, what the world wants today is the real thing, Coca-Cola. That's more of a poetic claim, or it's not true false. 5 is actually evidence. Some people didn't get that when I've gone over it in the past. That is evidence. That has a true false value. That would be an outstanding piece of evidence to present if you had a claim, for instance, that Americans, despite their sophistication, still remain a rather superstitious people. 6, I've always believed this isn't evidence. This is just an assertion. Astrophysics is truly amazing. That's nothing either. It is not a it's an exclamation. That's really what it is. Kind of like saying, "Oh wow, it's amazing." That doesn't mean anything. 8 is a good example of evidence. That's how we determine whether or not somebody could have done something. And 9, tell me where you were last night, is a command. So that can't be. It's on your list of things that can't be evidence or commands. 10 is definitely evidence, 6 foot 1 inches tall. That helps us determine who the person is. Recognizing conclusion in evidence. Religion is a force for good in the world. That is a claim. He presents evidence. We have, for example, the Jewish religion places a good deal of emphasis on scholarship, impressing on its adherents the importance of academic study. More evidence. Christianity emphasizes the virtues of charity and nonviolence. And Islam teaches self-control and the benefit of daily ritual to those who practice it. This next sentence is evidence. It's actually counter-evidence that's being presented and being met. It is true that much violence has been committed in the name of religion, but the real fact of the matter is that those who committed such violence did so out of a perverse, mistaken interpretation of their religion. You'll be reading about that a little bit later, different types of evidence. And counter evidence is often very useful. Anybody who would want to make a claim religion is a force for good has evidence to prove that. But there's also some evidence out there that shows religion is also bad. Now, a lot of people have been killed because of religion. A lot of bad things have happened. And so when you have counter evidence, and anything worth making a claim on, there will be counter evidence. What a writer or thinker has to do is deal with it. The way you deal with it is to prove that this counter evidence is false, which usually isn't the case, or you can mitigate it. That means lessen it, put it in a different perspective, etc. So we'll be going through that. There are different kinds of evidence. This isn't all of them, but there's testimony, and testimony is what somebody would be stating. Now, there are two kinds. Testimonials are somebody telling a story. I took this pill and I lost weight, etc. That tends not to be great evidence, because a testimonial is one person. It doesn't represent many. We don't know if it's even true. They could be lying. Testimonials are rather weak evidence. Not to say that they're bad altogether, but expert testimony is a different creature altogether. And that isn't someone telling a story. It is an expert opinion. That's sometimes called that, where an expert weighs in and gives his or her ideas about a particular thing. And that's good evidence. We also have up here in evidence, expert testimony is mentioned. And again, that's part of the other. Facts and statistics, I wish they didn't put these together, because facts aren't statistics. Occasionally they are, but they're different creatures oftentimes. A fact is something that can easily be checked, and you cannot debate it. It is what it is. Statistics, on the other hand, are what are calculated from sets of data. And sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not. Statistics are useful to us so that we can understand things. We see statistics frequently. Now, you have to be careful with statistics because statistics, one of my favorite books that I read years ago was called literally Lies, Damn Lies, and Statistics. The inference is that, okay, there's bad stuff, lies, there's really bad stuff, and then there's even worse stuff, which is statistics. And it was kind of humorous, but the whole book was about how people distort reality through statistics, and often they do. Nonetheless, statistics are useful. But for them to be good, they need to be sufficiently, they're always based on samples. Let me get to that idea. Whenever we say something like 86%, I'll give you an example. 85% of American women who are married cheat on their husbands. Okay? Now, how do you come up with a number like that? Did you ask every American woman? Of course not. We sample. It's always a sample. The American census that's now being taken, that's close to not being a sample. They try and get everybody, but still it's not everybody. That's a good source of statistics. Most samples are just based, are a piece of the population. If I told you 85% of women were married, that are married commit adultery, I would need a sufficiently large sample. Now, there are millions of American women, and that sample that I'm quoting the statistic from just had 897 respondents. It must be representative. That means that the statistic needs to represent, the sample needs to represent the whole population. You think of married women in America, and that is a lot of variety. You have women who are, maybe 18 who are married. We have them that are 80. We have people from different religious backgrounds who are married. We have people in different regions who are married. It goes on and on and on. The sample I gave you isn't really representative. I'll tell you where I got that from in just a moment. And representative goes along with the idea of it must be randomized. That's a pretty crazy sounding word. That doesn't mean it's haphazard. It means that the sample that's picked needs to be such that every member of the target population would have a chance of being chosen. This 85% of married women cheating on their husband statistic, first of all, it was small. 867 women responded. It wasn't representative, and it wasn't randomized. Everybody couldn't respond to it because that statistic came from a reader survey of women who were subscribers to the magazine called Playgirl. Now, I'm not being really judgmental, I hope, but I think we could agree that the kind of a woman who would actually take out a subscription to Playgirl magazine would probably be more likely to cheat on her husband than somebody who's reading Better Homes and Gardens. And by the way, readers of either magazine, if that's what you're limiting your population to, they don't represent the whole of American married women. So be aware of that when you're looking at analogies or comparisons. Often they're useful, and we'll be looking at other examples. Hypotheticals are things that could happen, and we'll just move on a little bit. Counter evidence is mentioned there, and so are assumptions. I'm hoping that you made it through all these and that it makes sense to you, and we'll be catching up next time. We get to dive into logic after this, which is just a lot of fun. Be good, stay safe, stay out of trouble. Catch you later on. Bye.